I'm the Failure Guy. Welcome to the podcast. On this episode of the Failure Guy podcast, our guest is Marcus Lee. Marcus, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Cornell. I'm excited to be here and talk through some failures with you today.
Okay. And as I like to do for the folks out there in podcast land, I like to have them take a little bit of time, have you take a little bit of time and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how you come to be here with us on the Failure Guy podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Marcus. I am formerly a VP of digital product and AI strategy for a Fortune 500 company. And now I'm in my transition phase, as it were, where I'm exploring some new opportunities. And this will be part of the failure mindset here. We'll get into that a little bit later. But just kind of rethinking how things kind of work, right? I have spent about 20 years in engineering and product development. So now I'm just kind of sharing what I've learned over the course of time with startups, with other successful companies that are trying to figure out how to connect their businesses, their products with their customers, and taking time to help develop leaders. Really, there's so much that we kind of miss out in culture and the importance of having a growth mindset and helping the people inside of our organizations grow properly. So that's really, the area that the box I play in, as it were, is sort of sharing that information and helping others to kind of understand that it's important for us to have grace for ourselves as we move forward and stumble through things and excel through things, and yes, sometimes fail our way through things. So that's a little bit about me. Hopefully I can kind of explore more of my story and journey as we go through this conversation today.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely the point of our conversation. Now, you mentioned two things that caught my ear right away, which is developing leaders and having grace with ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so something that I've noticed and come to realize and to really hone in on over the years is that when we look at leadership, we have there's a sort of mindset that's in place where leaders have to be perfect. There has to be perfection there. And what ends up happening is a lot of leaders or managers spend a lot of their time hiding, right? They hide who they are. They hide their true selves, and they put a front forward because they're afraid to show any of the cracks, right? And what happens is we develop a facade, and it's very difficult to lead through a facade.
Well, yes, I that totally resonates with me. So let me ask you this. In dealing with leaders, I'm assuming there's some sort of leadership training or leadership workshops. What do you find is the biggest stumbling block in terms of coaching these leaders how to develop a new mindset around leadership?
Yeah, so I think really what it comes down to is helping them to understand the difference between managing and leading. They're two very different things, right? So when you're looking at managing is about tasks getting done. Right? Leading is about helping others grow, about moving things forward, moving people forward. And there's two very different ways to do those things, right? And so I always tell leaders that your job is to help others grow and to develop other leaders. If you are not continually building people up to take the position that you're currently in, you're not doing it right.
Okay. So would you say that leadership is a component of management, but perhaps not the other way around necessarily?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that so what you have in leadership is there's a component of that is having people who are willing to follow you, right?
And I
Right.
do want to interject here. That's a very interesting distinction. People who are willing to follow you as opposed to being compelled or forced or, hey, you want the next paycheck, you better straighten up. That's a very important
Exactly.
distinction.
Exactly. So something that a lot of people don't understand is that it's possible to lead without the title.
Ooh,
Right. So you can be in a position where you're in an organization or you're at a certain place inside of the company that you're at, or in your community, in your church, or whatever it is, where you have ideas, you have thoughts, and people sort of gather around you. They follow you willingly into whatever the idea is. Wherever you're going, people go that direction with you. You're a leader. That's all there is to it, right?
okay, okay.
And because the people around you have given you that mantle, right?
Right, right.
Right.
Now, would you say, perhaps conversely, there are people who, although they have a title that connotes leadership, manager, the vice president, boss, whatever have you,
Mhm.
supervisor, that they aren't necessarily, in terms of their actual activities and the way they interact with people, they're not necessarily leaders, even though theoretically or ostensibly they might be.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I think that we probably run into more of that than
Oh,
anything else.
oh,
There are many people who are in positions of leadership who are not actually leaders. They are
wow.
managers.
Wow. Yes. Yes. Um, and as you said, that's people who speak to the task. Get it done. Check the tick the box.
Mhm.
Um, now, I would assume that when you're dealing with an organization that requires this sort of leadership structure, that there might be like a level in the org chart above the people who are the ones who are being assigned this leadership
Mhm.
training. And how often do you find that you don't necessarily, or you do, well, no, speak to getting the buy-in from the stakeholders who are not necessarily the ones that you are giving the training to, but the ones who are signing it and the ones who have to be answered to, if you say. What's the difference between a stakeholder that says, no, no, we need this, and I don't care what they say or how they feel about it, versus the ones who are just going to go with the status quo, and if there's resistance from below, they're not going to have your back?
Yeah, so I think what it comes to in that sort of sense is understanding that leadership brings growth. It brings growth at the individual, and it brings growth inside of the organization, right? So if you speak to those who the stakeholders who are maybe above leaders who are making decisions, and can get buy-in from them on the effects of leadership growth and how that will grow their business, right?
Mm,
So what you have to do is put it in a perspective that they understand. This is going to grow your bottom line.
right.
Why does it grow your bottom line? Because people who feel that they are seen, that they are heard, and that they are understood are
Right.
going to put more time, effort, and they are
Ah,
going to be more efficient in what they're doing, right? So they're going to be a
right.
better reflection of your company. They're going to
Mm,
put in more for your company so your customers feel better served.
right, right. And the phrase just hit me as I'm listening to you talk, and it's literally just came to me right now, is that you can appeal to the higher angels by speaking to the bottom line.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
that's a good
that's
one.
interesting.
I like that.
Okay, okay. So you also mentioned product development. I don't want to get too deep down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
but as a techie myself, it's what I've been doing half my life at this point. What sort of products and what sort of organizations did you do that part of your
Yeah.
career with?
So I started my career as a software engineer.
Mm.
So I was actually building tools inside of financial services to keep track of productivity. That's where I started. I was a cog in the wheel, but I was building something there, right? Kind of got into design and spending time with end users to kind of understand a little more about what they wanted, what they needed, trying to sort of understand that. Um, Somewhere along the way, I sort of found a way to marry the two and spent a lot of time as in like the auditing field and understanding efficiency.
Ah,
And once I understood the efficiency and how some of these things kind of came together, it was like something clicked for me, right? So there's a process that has to happen, and that's what it all comes down to. You work inside of
ah,
a framework, you develop a process. Through that
hmm,
process, it allows the user, the end user, to have a delightful experience, right? And there are a lot of different elements that come along with that. So. Sort of moving from there, I spent time in a lot of digital tools development, um, time with, I was in AR and VR before it kind of blew up.
okay.
So one of the products that we developed was a little too early to market, and that was a good failure, but it was a good lesson to learn.
Yes, yes,
Right? Timing is very important. It's not just about having the right thing, it's having the right thing at the
yes,
right time.
yes.
Um, so, sort of moving on from there, I spent some time developing systems and tools for churches to
Hmm.
help their processes that they worked inside of their to manage their churches, to interact with um, there are people who went to the church, the people who were employed by the church, the kids, everybody, like just
Wow.
developing systems that kind of helped with all of that. Coming up
Okay.
in through the pandemic, we developed an entire system to be able to have remote church. So that was
Oh,
actually kind of fun, to pivot what we were doing into that, right? Um, because everything up until that point was very, very in person. And then moving from there, moving into marrying hardware and software, and getting a chance to look back into like some of my AR roots. um,
hmm.
I moved into a Fortune 500 company and started developing a product for early emergence crop scouting. Um, so that's AI and ML and computer vision, everything working together, inside of an iPad, to be able to make farmers more efficient and help them make better decisions in the field so they can have better
Okay.
crop yields. Um, and
Wow.
then taking some of the learnings from that and developing full AI systems that impact the entire enterprise from customer service to the C-suite. So I've been through a lot of different areas in product development, whether it was design, um, sort of like on the support side, from a development side, engineering. It doesn't matter. I've pretty much covered it when it comes to product development now.
Okay. Well, that. First of all, that's quite a journey. I mean, first of all, from the world of finance to religion to church, and then back into the corporate world, and in crop exploration and things of this nature. And just for the listeners out there, so they don't get lost in the acronyms, AR is augmented reality, VR is virtual reality, AI artificial intelligence, ML is machine learning. Just for, I mean, I know this
Yeah.
because I've been a techie for half my life, but a lot of people don't know this. But one thing that struck me at the very beginning of your sort of overview of your career path is you mentioned that you got into studying efficiency,
Yes.
and then you said that it was so that the end user could have a delightful experience. Now, you and I both know that delightful doesn't tend to be an adjective associated with anything associated with efficiency. I mean, the stereotype of the efficiency expert is the guy with the pocket
Right.
protector and the clipboard, who's all about, stopwatching and all this kind of stuff. And that totally does not sound like your experience with it or your your impetus as to why you are looking to do that, your intention. So it's a rather unusual approach to have a technically minded, a software developer, a programmatic, and that takes a certain level of left brain logical thinking. But you seem to be very personal and personable and humanistic about that, which is
Yeah.
an interesting combination. So where does that come from?
So there's I'm a strong believer that every person is uniquely equipped to solve problems,
Hmm.
specific problems.
Hmm.
For me personally, my thing is user experience. And that can be an experience as a customer if I go to a hotel. It can be the experience that I have if I go and if I'm buying ice cream. It can be the experience that I have whenever I go to the DMV, right?
Hmm.
Very, very different areas. But whenever I encounter a process, something that is happening in the wild that feels wrong, that upsets me in a way that I know other people are feeling, right?
Right.
Because we're just trying to get something done. There's something we're trying to get out of it, right? Whether it's I'm trying to develop a new experience, with my daughter, right? And we're putting a new memory, a core memory, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
or I'm going to the DMV because I need to get an updated license or whatever it is. There's a process that happens as part of me interacting with this business, right? And inside of that process, there are different people at different stages. There are different forms or softwares or different things that are being interacted with throughout this entire process. And if I'm getting frustrated, if I walk away from the experience and I feel frustrated, then there was something wrong there. And so the way that my brain works is, well, how do we fix that? How do we make the process more efficient and more seamless so that way when the user, when they, from the beginning to the end, they come away with a positive emotion,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? It's like, okay, so when you think about um like a nail and a hammer, right?
Right.
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 I'm selling you a hammer so you can put a nail in the wall, right? But I'm not. We're going to take it further than that. I'm selling you a hammer so you can put a nail in the wall. You're putting a nail in the wall so you can
Hmm.
hang a picture. You're hanging a
Hang a picture.
picture so not just so you don't have a blank wall, but so you have something
Right.
that you can kind of see there, right? You're
Right.
putting that specific picture there because of the emotion you get when you look at that picture.
Wow. So
So
you're seeing it all the way through.
yeah,
Wow. And it sounds to me like you go about your life and you see the life through a dual lens system. There's one lens that's looking at it. What is the process? The BPM of it, the business process management.
right.
What are structures? But then, wait a minute. This is just a framework that you have to plug human beings into because
Hmm.
processes don't exist without the people. They're nothing. So how does this affect the people? How do the people affect it? What are they putting into it? What are they getting out of it? What are they desiring as the final outcome? And
Exactly.
it's not either or. You're kind of seeing it both at the same time, which is fascinating because I know a lot of very humanistic people. Yeah, I call them my touchy-feely granola eating tree huggers,
Mhm.
and I say that affectionately. I'm just kidding. But I also, as a techie myself for half of my life, I also have known, my background is mostly a systems administrator, and I've worked in financial, Lehman Brothers, Payne Weber, so I can really say that. But a lot of the people who tend to be in the tech side of it tend to be very sort of, and I don't say this in a demeaning way, but sort of mechanistic in their view of the world. And
Absolutely.
and it's more important to them, if then decision trees and whatever have you. And it's like, people have to be
Yep.
plugged into this. You can have an efficient process that doesn't work because it doesn't work for the people, even though it works
Right.
in your sort of, schematics. But you're constantly, it seems, balancing both of those at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So when I was younger, um, I used to be much more like deterministic about things.
Hmm.
The way that my mind worked was, if we do this, this is the outcome we're going to get, and that's just how it is. Right. That's the way it should be. That's the way the world should work. But I knew from an early age that my mind worked differently than many people. Um, and there were a lot of things about human interactions and the way that people work that I didn't understand. So what I did actually is I took time and I studied just interpersonal dynamics.
Hmm.
How do humans interact with one another? What are the things that generally bring joy? What are the things that generally will impact your joy, like in a negative way? Um,
Hmm.
uh, and how does that all work together to where we as a society work? Right?
Hmm.
We have lots of different people at many, many different levels doing lots and lots and lots of different things that we all interact very, very differently. We think differently. We have a wide range of emotions. But when it all comes down to it, right, everybody is seeking joy in things, right? So how do we make things joyful? And so I spent a lot of time just really, really studying that. Um, and it changed, it made me softer, I would say. It
Okay.
definitely made me softer.
Okay.
So if for anyone who may be listening, who maybe knew me, 20 years ago, I'm sorry.
I'm not that guy anymore.
Right. But because of taking the time to sort of understand how other people may interact with the world, how other people interact with each other, and trying to understand things from a different perspective, um, it really changed things for me.
Hmm, okay. It's sort of interesting because I totally get it. I myself, as a younger person, experienced the frustration that people weren't logical. I mean, big surprise, my favorite original series Star Trek character was Mr. Spock.
Mhm.
And it's like, why are people so illogical? And I remember, and in a previous life, I was a musician. Like I said, didn't grow this long hair to do computers on Wall Street. Um, and I wrote a song because I was affected by, I think it was in 1981, there was a truce in the Middle East War, Lebanon, kind of similar to what happened in World War One, when there was a Christmas time truce. It was the same thing, it was Christmas truce. Except
Mm.
this time I was living through it and seeing it, and it's like they just stopped for Christmas Day. And I was like, that's amazing. They don't they see that war is just arbitrary, but then of course the next day
Right back at
start
it.
up, and it broke me because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Would you just stop? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so for a while, I was very puzzled at the contradictory nature of humanity, and it seems to me that you sort of, from the deterministic perspective, said, okay, if there is a model of human behavior, clearly it's not as structured as a strictly if this then that. So how does it work?
Hmm.
Maybe it's more like a sort of a quantum mechanics of it. Maybe it's sort of indeterminate, determinate, or whatever. And then you pursued it and said, well, let me learn what it is I'm not seeing because I'm looking at it too rigidly, too
Right.
structuredly. So let me see how it is that it works. I'm still going to take an analytical approach to it, perhaps, but I'm going to analyze what it is, not what I'm thinking it is or ought to be.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And so what it does, or what it did for me, is it forces me to work the problems in reverse.
Mm,
Right. So I'm starting at the very end result, and I start from the end result, and I work my way backwards.
okay, okay.
And so going through that, if I have to go through many, many different sort of scenarios, right? And I have to go through a lot of different things and look at things from different perspectives, and have a 30,000 foot view, but then also be able to jump in and look at individual little pieces and how each little piece will affect the overall picture. And so you're looking at things from multiple perspectives, and I think that's something that as leaders, and just as humans as a whole, if we can spend more time looking at things from others' perspectives, it makes things better, right? A lot of times we spend so much time looking just from our point of view,
Right.
a singular point of view. This is where I'm going to make my decision from. I'm going to work just from this point of view, and that's all there is to it. But um, I always tell people, like, you cannot argue someone's perception
Mm,
of an event, right? especially if you don't understand their perspective.
Okay. Okay.
So we've all kind of seen that picture, right? Where it's a meme. You have one person standing on one side, and they're looking at this figure, and they say it's a 6, and the other person is standing on the other side, and they're like, no, it's a 9. Who's
Right.
right?
Right. And also that's very fascinating. How did you can't argue another person's perception
Without
of things
understanding their perspective.
without understanding their perspective, and that what comes to mind is that sort of predicates a lot of the my way or the highway model of management, which is not a model of leadership, especially not as you're
Right.
defining it. That's not leadership at all. It's
No.
like, this is the way to do it. It's like, well, if you have cogs in a machine, the cog turns a specific way and it meshes with certain gears in a certain ratio. And that can be this way and no other way. But when you're dealing with people, it simply doesn't work at all.
Right, exactly. So it's funny that you kind of went there because something that I say often is I have very strong convictions, loosely held, right? So it's I am willing to plant my flag. I'm willing to plant my flag and make a decision with the information that I have today. But but if the terrain changes, if the map is constantly changing, I have to be willing to move my flag.
Right. Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, there's so many nuggets here. Strong convictions loosely held. I'm gonna take that one and add it to my lexicon. That's quite brilliant. And so, do you find that you get resistance when you try to introduce this kind of philosophical approach and you're dealing with your typical corporate types in leadership training and coaching?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Because again, it comes down to that bottom line, right? And we have so many times we have learned, that managing the people, like, say, this task has to be done, this is the result that we have to have, I'm going to train them to do this, and then I just need somebody to make sure that this is what's happening, and then that way we're going to get the results that we want in the end. That is the typical corporate mindset.
Right.
um, what you find is that, especially in corporate structures where you have thriving innovation, right? And that's where you're getting a lot of the big wins from innovative ideas, right? Innovative ideas go to their typical corporate structure to die. They
Oh
will
my gosh.
they will absolutely be just snuffed out inside of that environment. But by setting up almost like a substructure inside of that, right? And that's actually what they did for Skunkworks, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So they set up a full structure that was separate from the typical rigid corporate structure that said, hey, you know what? We're going to flatten things out. We're going to allow people to grow. We're going to allow people to thrive. We're going to allow people to be creative and to be innovative. We're going to give people. We're going to treat people like adults,
Yeah.
right? And by saying, hey, you know what? I'm giving you ownership of this. I'm trusting you that you can do this. They were able to introduce many things that never ever would have come to
Yes.
light,
Yes.
right?
And it's interesting you mentioned Skunkworks, and of course, as soon as before you even dropped the term, I was thinking of the most famous Xerox's Palo Alto Research Center,
Yeah.
and most famously, and you're saying innovation goes to the corporate world to die, and you couldn't have a better example than Park created the graphical user interface paradigm.
Hmm.
Full stop. Everything
Yep.
that has what they call the WIMP model, Windows icon, mouse pointer, came from there. Whether it's X Windows in Unix, whether it's the Mac OS, whether it's Microsoft Windows. And yet, they created the Skunkworks, created this private, separate domain for the innovation to happen. And then the corporate world said, yeah, but what are we going to do with that?
Right. And then they let all the alpha guys come in and just kind of like see
Exactly.
it. And
And
right.
everyone says, that's a great idea. We're going to go back home and reverse engineer that.
Right.
So they knew we can't develop anything like that unless we give them the domain and the sandbox to play in. But even having done that, they didn't recognize the value of the innovation that they created the environment for it to exist.
Right, exactly. And that's where you have that sort of dichotomy of like the innovator's dilemma and the innovator's solution. So if you've ever read Clayton Christensen, he's got some fantastic writings on this,
Mm,
and lots and lots and lots of research, and kind of packages it up really, really well, and sort of explains that when you are the incumbent, right, and you are moving forward, you have two options. You can either stay your course and and hope that staying your course will continue to thrive,
mm,
right? Or you can create something innovative at the risk of it failing,
mm, mm.
right? And if you take the risk and it fails, are you willing to pivot that failure into another chance, right? And a lot of people who are kind of put in charge of making those decisions, the big thing they're worried about is their own jobs,
Right, right,
right? And because they're so worried about their own jobs, because the way that the corporate structure is set up, there's no room for failure, right?
right,
And we are taught and we are conditioned to believe that failure is the opposite of success,
right.
but it's not.
No,
It's not. Every success is built on top of failures.
yes.
We don't talk about that enough, right? Which is why I was very, very excited to.
Well, not for nothing. That's why actually it's 8 years ago now that I came up with the idea for this podcast, and that was in 2017. In 2018, I was walking around listening to a podcast on on my phone,
Mm,
and an announcement came up that at Columbia University's Teachers College they were going to have a 2-day lecture series on the success of failure. And I said, well, this is someone somewhere is, dialing into my frequency. And so I went to that. And actually, the first two guests of the first iteration of the Failure Guide podcast in 2019, one of them was a professor at Columbia University who spoke during that series, and the other one was someone who was a guest at that series.
wow.
So I totally feel, because I feel that failure is so stigmatized that people feel it's like Beetlejuice or the Candyman, that if you say it too many times, you're going to invoke it. And
Mm,
I always like to use the metaphor that, and you say you have a child, it takes most children about a year to learn how to walk.
yeah.
And every attempt at walking until they start walking is technically failure. But they don't give it up. If anything, I now speak as the tech in me, they're using it to calibrate, the outcome of their events and to dial in this walking thing. They see everybody else doing it and think, look, if these tall morons can do it, I'm sure I can do it. And sort of just figure out how. And I say if children approached failure the way adults do, we would all still be crawling on our hands and knees.
Yeah. They say that. So we always hear that saying, like, experience is the best teacher, right?
Yes.
And I'm gonna steal this one from John Maxwell, and it's experience is not the best teacher. It's evaluated experience is the best teacher,
Very important distinction.
right? So if you're not failing, quite honestly, you're probably not moving forward.
Mm, mm. Well, there's a saying in the agile tech world: fail fast, fail forward.
Yes, it's like fail early, fail often, fail fast, but
Yes.
make sure that you're failing forward. Yeah, yeah,
Now, folks out there who are listening to the podcast know that I don't pre-interview my guests because I like to have everything be sort of a surprise for me. But I do have the onboarding form that you filled out, and so you did give me some notes. And
yeah.
I'd like to, in the time that we have left, explore something very interesting. First of all, I love your sort of title, that overview. You said that there's power in the pivot, but then you mention your motorcycle accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I didn't talk about it for a long time. I'm a what people find about me is I hold my cards very close to my chest.
Mm.
I'm not very open, and um, the motorcycle accident is something that even to this day, like I'm still dealing with. It happened 10 years ago, um, but it completely has changed my entire life. Very much affected me and everything that I'm doing and everything that I've done. So I mentioned, a lot of my corporate successes. You mentioned that you grew your hair for your music, right? It's funny. I cut my hair for music. I used to have long hair. Um, so while I was working in corporate finance earlier in my career, I was also pursuing a music career. And through that time, through lots of different iterations of the band that I was in, some worked well, some things didn't. Um, Eventually, we got signed to a record deal.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, yeah. So I spent some time, playing music and writing music, and um, found that I had a superpower in helping others to develop their sound.
Mm.
Um, and so I moved out of being a performer and moved into working with the label and being a producer and doing all of that. And then eventually, my contract was fulfilled, and I decided I was going to start my own recording studio. And so I
Mm.
actually built a pretty decent, like thriving recording studio business out in
Wow.
Arizona in the Valley.
Okay.
And uh, so I had that running for a while, and my whole life, my identity, everything who I was, everything that I did was wrapped up in music up until the night of the motorcycle accident. And in fact, I was on my way home from the studio when it happened, and so I'm on my way home, and a drunk driver hit me
Oh my God. Head on.
head on, hit me head on. Um, and it's really interesting because I don't remember it. So I have a lot of memory loss from around the time of the accident, from a lot of the recovery time after the accident. There are many, many things I don't remember. Um, and we'll kind of get into that and how it shifted everything and caused me to pivot. And so I came to in the hospital, um, and there were doctors and nurses, like people were all around me, like poking and prodding and like doing something, and I was going through this machine, and it was funny, like at least it was funny to me, like because they said, do you know what happened? And my response was, I'm assuming there was an accident.
Again, just judging from the context clues, I'm gonna make an assumption here.
Yeah. And so I didn't realize at that point what all had happened. I didn't realize how broken I was. I didn't realize what
Mm.
had happened to my mind. Um, but I did know that something was different. I knew for sure something was different. During that time, I was in the process of acquiring another property to build out our fourth recording studio in the Valley.
Mm.
Um, and it was really interesting because I didn't think of anything except for that night. Um, I was like, somebody needs to get my phone and call my partner and tell him this is what happened and this is exactly what I need you to do. And it was really weird because like my brain just flipped to business,
Mm.
strictly business. Let's do this. I was not really processing what was going on. I was still laying on this gurney. Nobody really knew how broken I was yet, but I knew that one thing. Um, but what came out of this accident was um, months and months of recovery. I was in the hospital for over a month. I was in a like rehab facility for a while after that. I had to have multiple, we'll go with multiple surgeries. I think there were seven, but I had a lot of surgeries for my shoulder, like just lots of parts of my body were very, very broken.
Mm.
But like I mentioned, my mind, there was something happened there. prior to the accident, I spoke 6 languages.
Wow.
I was writing music and all of this. After the accident, I had a hard time stringing together complex sentences in English.
Wow.
All of the other languages were gone. I mention when I talk to people, like, I lost music. And it's really strange because, people ask, what do you mean by you lost music? Like, the way that I kind of experience it is that music is just completely gone for me. It was completely taken away. I don't remember writing most of the stuff that I wrote. I don't
Wow.
remember how to play any instruments. The only thing I remember is there's one song on piano, because during my recovery, they forced me to play piano to get both sides of my brain to work together.
Ah. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. So it was an interesting part of my recovery and therapy there. And so I remember that song. I know how to play that song, and that's it. But the rest of music is gone. And it's weird because people will show me pictures or videos or play songs for me, and they're like, do you remember this? I don't remember any of it at all. And even stuff that was from years and years and years prior to the accident, I don't remember any of it. So it's almost like it was surgically removed. And what happened through this is that the core piece of my identity, or at least what I thought it was, right, was removed.
Wow.
And I was at a crossroads. It was, do I just give up, or do I take my strengths that I have in other areas and take that and pivot into something different? And the reason I mentioned the business thing earlier is because I found that the same power that I had to sort of understand processes earlier, to help artists to develop their sound and to really take what they had and make it better, I could apply that in business.
Mm.
So that's what I did. The largest pivot that I made in my life was moving from music back into the corporate world and focusing directly on product development. And how do I take everything that I've experienced, everything that I learned, everything that I can remember, and start building something that allows people to be able to have a delightful experience, to bring them joy, and to create frameworks and processes for this to happen over and over and over, regardless of where we go.
Wow. I mean, to put it in terms of our field, that's almost like a complete, like, hard reset.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Except for I took a lot of what I had already experienced, right? And just moved it, right? Shifted the
Yeah.
focus from one
Yeah.
thing to another.
Yeah. So there was some firmware there
Yeah,
that survived the reset.
exactly.
And we just applied the different algorithms. Okay, sorry for you out there in podcast land for getting too techie for you, but this is what happens. And just a brief little anecdote. There was a song from the '70s called "Dancing in the Moonlight," which is a really like nice, bright. Everybody was dancing in the moonlight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The story of that song, the guy who wrote it and his fiance at the time were somewhere in some tropical island, and they were violently assaulted.
Oh, wow.
He was beaten unconscious, came to and beat off his attackers that were assaulting her. And then after that, he wrote that song,
That's incredible.
which is one of the lightest, poppiest. And I heard that on a podcast somewhere. It's like, you've got to be, how is that traumatic near-death experience, and you write one of the poppiest, most uplifting, effervescent song, you can't dance and stay uptight, it's supernatural delight, everybody was dancing in the moonlight. That's not what happened in the moonlight.
Right.
But so it just goes to show you, because a lot of people, let's be honest, and I'm sure you've heard this before, the few people you might have shared your incident with. Because as I no longer actively play, but I was just talking to my It's a friend of mine. I think I have something like 13 instruments. I have two guitars, two basses, seven harmonicas, two digital keyboards. Don't really play any of them worth anything, but I have them all.
Hmm.
Um, I could not imagine the experience that I've had with music since I was like a tween, just being gone. Like somebody pulled that card out, like the scene in 2001 when he's pulling the memory chips out of Hal's, and even though it's not what I'm doing, and haven't really done it since I was in my mid 30s. I'm 64 now, but to not have that, and I mean, you seem to be in very good spirits, great spirits to say, if I might say, and
I'd say that's the it was a conscious choice, right?
say more about
So,
that. Yeah.
so we have the ability to make a decision every day whether we're going to have a good day
Mm.
or not, right? I used to tell people, have a great day, have a good day. I shifted that to make it a great day,
Oh,
make it a good day,
I like
right?
that. I
Because
like that.
there's purpose behind that, right?
Yes.
And with purpose is passion. And when you bring those two together, there's something that happens that just empowers us. And so by making the decision to be upbeat, making the decision to be joyful, right? There's lots going on. There are lots of opportunities. Like and it's not ignoring the things that hurt. It's not ignoring
Right.
the things that make you feel down. But what it is choosing to still be positive.
Right, right. And in the notes that you supplied in the onboarding form, the two things that stand out is you say one thing you hear life doesn't ask permission before it pivots.
No.
And you also say your value isn't in your pace or productivity. It's in your purpose and how you show up even when everything falls apart.
Yep.
Just say a
Yep.
little bit more about that because that's some pretty profound stuff there.
Yeah. So it's funny. We talk a lot about um I was having a conversation with my daughter a couple days ago, and
How old is she, by the way?
she's 8. She's
Oh my
8.
God, that's a great age.
She's 8. She's a philosopher. She's a physicist. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, my
Um,
grandnephew was a paleontologist since he was 4, so I totally understand where
okay,
you're coming
so
from.
yeah, you get it. Um, and we always ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? I want to be this. I want to be this. I want to do that. Right? And that changes over the course of time.
Yeah.
And then we get into our careers, right? And we start a progression, right? What is it that you want to do? What is it you want to become? And somewhere along the way, we get very, very focused in on the what, a little bit of the how, but we don't focus so much on the who.
Ooh. Ooh, see, you had me there because I thought you were going to say the why. So that's the
Yeah, you're
ooh,
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, the why, a lot of times the why is focused around, well, we need to get paid. We want, some sort of like, there's like an esteem that comes with different things. Like the everybody has their own why, right? But the who is the part that
Mm,
follows you no matter what it is you're
mm,
doing and no matter
mm.
where you're doing it,
Wow.
right?
Yes. Like the
So
saying
if
goes,
we
no matter where you go, there you are.
Exactly, exactly. So by focusing in on the who you are, that changes everything. It changes everything. So when you're focused in on your growth, when you're focused in on your journey, when you're focused in on becoming the person who it is that you want to be, who you feel you're meant to be, who you have the power to be, right? You're going to take that with you no matter where you're at.
Wow. Wow. That is very profound, and and I say often in almost every episode that even if nobody else ever listens to these conversations, I'm so glad to have them because I get so much. And if I'm the only one that gets something out of it, then yay me, because it's really wonderful. And that's just really, in all of my 64 years, I can't say that the general concept of that hasn't occurred in some nebulous sort of way, but to
Yeah.
really focus on that, the who, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm endeavoring, whatever I'm aspiring towards, who am I in the midst of that?
Right.
That's, yeah, that's food for thought.
Yep. Yeah. It's a different perspective, right? And it was something that was actually brought to me by one of my mentors, right?
Mm,
And ever since he said it to me, it's stuck with me, and it has
yes.
become a core part of who I am. It's become a core part of the message that I try to bring to others, and it's a core part of what I try to teach in growth and in leadership.
Yes, yes. And one final point here, you say, and I love this, you say, don't attach your identity to outcomes.
Yeah.
Just what you were talking about, who you are isn't what you achieve, it's how you respond when things fall apart. And particularly here we are in a conversation on a podcast dedicated to failure. And as I say, failure is an acronym that I have, mean first attempts in learning using real experience,
Ooh,
and who
yeah.
you are inside of the failure. That's pretty fun. So say a little bit about that before we conclude.
Yeah. So like when you think about it is, you don't, okay. You don't fail until you give up,
Ah, yes.
right? So you fail over and over and over and over and over and over, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It's what for you, what it is having the determination to try again, having the determination to keep going. Um, and if you look again, it kind of goes up to the bigger story that I was
Yes.
talking about before, right? So if you're looking at like whatever your current circumstances are, right?
Right.
Whatever your what's happening right now, like it's part of a larger story. So if we don't focus so much on like a single point, right, or a single detail, it helps us to be able to make sure we're not losing sight of what the bigger picture is. And so, sort of going through that, we're able to make sure that that I lost my thought. I was headed somewhere with that. I was headed somewhere with that.
No, no,
I don't know that it's coming back.
I, I no, I hear you. Basically, no, by keeping a focus on the context of ourselves in the midst of what it is we're doing. Because as you're saying, we can get caught up in goals, we can get caught up in outcomes, we can caught up in intentions and circumstances. But if we keep the focus on who is in the midst of all of that, who's the operator of this weird roller coaster ride we might be on? Because
Right.
as you said, failure is not the final outcome.
No.
And it's something I say at the conclusion of every podcast. Is that never quit, keep running.
Right.
And that's I mean, yeah, I think you really sum it up and hit the nail on the head by focusing on who we are. Because I have had some down times. I have been extremely poor when I was a musician. I've been homeless 3 times in my life, but that was never who I was.
Right.
That was just situations and circumstances. And I'm here right now. And in fact, ironically, the second time I was homeless, I published my first book and I was flown to France to speak on the stage of the stadium where the most recent Summer Olympics was held as a subject matter expert on entrepreneurship and empowerment.
Wow.
I was flown back, business class, to Kennedy Airport, and then I got on a bus and went back to the homeless shelter.
Hmm.
you know,
Wow.
so definitely, it really speaks to me when you say keep the focus on who you are, because
On
it's
who
not
you
the
are.
what, the why, and the how. It's the who, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I heard a saying, and you might know who it is. I can't remember off the top of my head who said it, but it was things turn out best for people who make the best of the way that things turn out.
Mm, that is wow. That is yeah.
Right?
I can't say it any better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So regardless of what the outcome is, right? If you make the best of it, if you keep persevering, if you, like you said, you stay to the core of who you are, and you do you, right? It's that being transparent, being real, and bringing the best of who you are. Things are going to turn out okay.
Yes, yes. So, well, first of all, I just got to thank you so much for taking the time out of your Sunday and having this conversation. It's really great. It's and I seeing here that's John Wooden
Okay.
who said that. I
Thank
was
you.
looking
Thank
it
you.
up on my just because I'm sure other people out there. Well, who said it? You got to
Yeah.
tell me. But this is so great. So first of all, I'm assuming that you're a bit younger than me. How old are you, if you don't mind
I'm
my asking?
40, 41.
Okay,
I have to think
a
about
mere
it.
babe, a mere. I remember my 40s so fondly. But anyway, and your 8-year-old daughter, is that your only child?
She's our youngest. So
Okay.
she's our youngest. Our oldest is getting ready to turn 21, and then we
Ooh.
have two teenagers in the middle.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you got the nice spread there.
Yeah.
In fact, it's kind of interesting because I have a sister that's 2 years older than me. I have
Okay.
a brother that's 4 years younger than me, and then I have a brother that's 15 years younger than me.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah, so we've got that kind. In fact, I was quite shocked when I came home in high school and discovered that my mom was having a fourth kid. It was like, say what? I thought that was kind of a closed loop.
Right.
You know, it's so crazy. But
Yeah.
I myself have no kids, but then as people constantly remind me, you have a lot of kids. You have all the kids in the world in the stuff that I'm looking to do with things like this podcast and the various
Mhm.
other workshops and outreach that I do because, basically I do this podcast and people ask me, well, how many people? So it's like, I don't know. I don't know that it's not a very popular podcast, but I don't care. Like I say, I'm doing it because I think we need to have open and honest conversations about
Mhm.
failure. And as you're just saying so eloquently, we need to change the way we look at leadership, not just in the corporate world, but just in general.
In
I mean,
general.
and
Yeah.
what's happening political, I don't want to fix this podcast in time, but the things that are happening politically here in the United States, and that's just regardless. We're 4 years from now, 4 years ago, it's the same thing. We have too many bosses and I don't know, bosses and bullies comes to mind simply for the alliteration,
Yeah.
but not enough people. And as you said, a leader is someone who inspires people to follow them
Yep.
and doesn't
Absolutely.
compel them to follow them. And I really couldn't agree more. And also who looks to create leaders. So many people are threatened by, well, if they're going to lead, it's like, well, first of all, you're not going to be the only one. Second of all, you're not going to be here forever, you know. And third of all,
Right.
someone once said to me, and when I was in the corporate world, if you're irreplaceable, you're unpromotable.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, right. If I'm defending the chair, then I'm stuck there.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's
Exactly. Exactly. Like we can't move you up if there's nobody to fill that space.
exactly.
So.
That's so much. So, just want to share with people out there who might be watching the podcast. You can get in touch with Marcus. His via LinkedIn. He is Marcus Tech, all one word on LinkedIn. Also, his email address is marcuslee.tech@gmail.com. And I'm sure that you really should. I would encourage you all to get in touch with him because we just had in this brief hour, we're just skimming the surface here. And perhaps someday in the future, I'll have you. I've been saying this season to every one of my guests. We should do a part two. And
Yeah.
in fact, the past four episodes that I recorded was two-part conversations with people that just filled up so much that I had to bring them back for another hour because I try to keep it down to an hour. I mean, I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not going to go for 4.5 hours or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Not
But
many of us are.
yeah, but once again, Marcus, thank you so much. So, is there any
Thank you, Kevin.
final parting words or thoughts you'd like to leave the folks with before we wrap things up?
Just give yourself grace and give yourself the space to fail and to try again.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
and folks, as as we say here in the Failure Guy, failure is just the first attempts at learning using real experience. Life is not a competition. The only race we run is with ourselves, and the only person we should be comparing ourselves with is the person we were yesterday. So remember to never quit and always keep running. And I will see you on the next episode. And until then, keep trying.